The Russian-Ukrainian crisis is becoming a dilemma to African neutrality, because I believe in Africa today, we don't seem to learn from the consequences of neutralities of the Cold War that we had in the beginning of 1950s to the 1960s and eventual independence, and all the consequences and damages and destruction that happened to Africa as a result of our alleged non-aligned neutrality. And it appears this time around, if you look at our voting pattern within the UN, where most Africans abstain from voting about the issue of Russian-Ukrainian crisis, the invasion and the removal of Russia from Human Rights Council, it means we are not learning from these lessons. And this could be consequentially destructive to our future in Africa, especially our country, Nigeria, that is major driver of Africa. If you look at the statistics, we provide 90% of global cobalt supply. You know what cobalt is used for? That is what is used for producing the high amount of battery that brings about the renewable energy that big companies like Tesla and Huawei are today using to be able to power the renewable energy revolution. If you go back to the other energy, uranium, Africa provides 35% of uranium supply. If you go back to coltan, we provide 75% of global supply. If you go back to gold, we provide half of the global gold supply. Two-thirds percentage of manganese supply. This is the continent that eventually might be the major supplier of the global commodity that will power the industries of the future. And here we are in Africa, having neutrality, refusing to come up one, dividing ourselves within 54 African countries while doing nothing other than neutrality. If we stay within the neutrality, the food crisis that we are seeing around the world and the global instability that is coming about due to this Ukrainian crisis may eventually hit Africa. And if it hit Africa, we are going to suffer much more, especially in Nigeria, where we have cases of terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, and so many other ills and evils that have dominated the Sahel and the regions around our country. So we should be able to be very, very careful about these things by coming as one Africa to be able to negotiate our strategic positioning in the global power play. Because of the situation that we are facing today, if you go back around the world, you saw the crisis that happened in Pakistan. But the Prime Minister Imran Khan was one of the best Prime Ministers Pakistan ever had, but he was removed as a result of the consequence of the Russian-Ukrainian interest. Again, if you go back to Sri Lanka recently, you saw how inflation dropped down the government and brought total political instability that the country is still suffering today. And the war is looking increasingly intense, intentional between the American military, industrial, media, money complex together with Russian mafia and Russian oligarchy to continue to strengthen the war effort, to continue to orchestrate the war effort, using Ukraine as a guinea pig to be able to advance global pressure that will culminate into total global instability, that will release the monster called inflation that will eventually bring down governments, including our government if care is not taken. And that is why it is high time for Nigeria to take charge of leading Africa to negotiate a very strong position that can be able to save our continent, grow our continent, mainstream us into global community so that we can be able to negotiate our interests based on the resources we have, or to put pressure on Russia and the West to end this Ukrainian crisis. It's clear that if we continue to allow this thing to come about without taking a very strong position, World War III is coming. And with the coming of World War III, if we don't have position, we become a playground. You saw the consequences of being a playground in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Egypt, in Libya. We should never let this happen. And we saw even most of us in Nigeria today, we are still suffering the consequences of neutrality of Libya that brought down Muammar Gaddafi and eventually brought so many weapons into our land that is killing our people, causing so much destruction, making the price of bullet to be more cheaper than the price of foods in our market. We should not let this happen. We should be able to have government and leadership that will see these things very clearly and address these issues in the interest of the future growth, development, stability, peace, security, and above all, stability of our country. Thank you very much.